the SignWriting keyboard allows users to type SignWriting on the internet, not in an isolated program, but embedded, integrated into the general web experience. So having sign languages on the internet, SignWriting on the internet, is complex, since sign languages aren't a simple series of sounds. SignWriting isn't represented as a simple series of characters. So the solution to this was developed 2 years ago by Steve Slavinsky, who we have here, who developed the SignWriting viewer, which allows us to store SignWriting text as ASCII characters, simple letters and numbers, in a system called formal SignWriting, which the script then displays as SignWriting text, as readable SignWriting text. So this has allowed us to display content, but we're still limited to a very minimal level of interactivity if the user can't type their own content. The SignWriting keyboard allows users to type SignWriting seamlessly, directly onto the web. For example, a user could, the keyboard allows the user to interact freely in sign language on a forum or a chat box, or to write an article on the American Sign Language Wikipedia, which incidentally just had the keyboard turned on less than 24 hours ago by default. The user could log into a website using a sign language username, or fill out a form, or search in sign language. The keyboard, together with the SignWriting viewer, really open up the web to sign languages in general. So using the keyboard is a bit different than previous earlier input methods in a number of ways. For one thing, we have the split layout. Each half of the keyboard controls a different symbol independently of the other at any time. And
Yair, are you going to be showing your keyboard? Or
yes. Yes, in a moment.
All right.
We also have instead of having lists of options and sub-options for hand shapes, we have 5 finger keys to a side, each of which controls one finger. So we have the finger keys here. The key for each finger is placed under where that finger is ordinarily placed on the home row, except for the thumb, which is down into the center of the index finger. So each of these finger keys moves that finger from its starting position in a fist hand shape. So suppose we wanted to make this hand shape with our index, middle, and ring finger raised. Then to do that, we simply press down on those three finger keys, and we have our hand shape. We'll just do that again. Press down on these 3 keys, and we have our hand shape. We also have our keys to change the facing, to rotate it, to change between the wall plane and the floor plane, and to move the symbol within the sign. It can be done in any order. You can even do this before you position the fingers. You can change the rotation or the plane. Remember that the keyboard is split down the middle, so that you have one set of each of these keys for each symbol that you're controlling. One for the right hand and one for the left hand. So we have our left hand symbol here, which can be moved like this using the left hand keys. Then when we're finished with a sign, when we're finished with a symbol, we can press the next symbol key to start another symbol, or to rotate back to previous symbols so that they can be further modified, positioned, repositioned, or even deleted using this key over here, the delete key, at the top outer corner of the keyboard. So then we also have these 3 shortcut keys at the bottom outer corners, which allow us to do slightly more complex things with the hand shape that couldn't be so easily accomplished by moving individual fingers. For example, we could change things to a circle hand shape, or the fingers together as a unit, or other things which would be difficult to get. So suppose we want to have a more complex handshake like this, then what we do here is we first press down on 5 finger keys for the 5 finger keys on the right hand. We have all the fingers raised, and then we press down again on the middle and ring fingers to position them in a hinge position. And then we have our handshake. We can do whatever with this. So let's say we want to make a flat handshake. There's a couple of ways we can do this. We can either raise all 5 fingers and group them together with a short key at the bottom, and then do that again. So we have this. There's also a shortcut, since it's a fairly common handshake, straight from the index finger. Go straight to that. And we rotate that and position it, and press next symbol to start another symbol. And of course, beside for handshapes, we have the movement arrows available. We have the head symbols, body symbols, dynamic symbols, and the top outer corners. So let's just create a simple sign here. Let's make a head with the left by pressing this, and then create an arrow, movement arrow over here, and position that up here. We've changed the plane from the wall plane to the floor plane using this key, which is the same key as we used to change between the wall plane and the floor plane for hand shapes. This can also be done in any order. You can set the plane even before you start making the movement arrow. Now we have our sign. So when we're finished a sign, you can press the space bar and start another sign. Navigation in the keyboard is actually fairly standard. You can use the arrow keys to switch between signs, or use the mouse to switch between signs. You can use backspace or delete to delete a sign, enter key to create a line break, or any of the normal key combinations to undo, redo, copy, paste, and so on. So occasionally, the user will also, besides for just writing plain signs, even in a sign editing area, the user will sometimes want to be able to put in plain text. For example, on Wikimedia, the user can create a link by surrounding some text in double square brackets. So to do that on the SignWriting keyboard, we have the toggle plain text key over here in the top left corner on the tilde key, which allows us to type normally. So create those double square brackets, and then we can press the same key again to go back into sign editing mode and start writing signs again. So we can navigate back into the plain text editing mode, into plain text area. When you're highlighting a plain text area, it's automatically in plain text mode. And then when you can navigate back to a sign, you're back in sign editing mode. So you can switch even in the middle. Suppose you press toggle plain text while you're within a plain text area, then you can just insert a sign in the middle there. You can delete that. Another mode we have available is the finger spelling mode, which is accessible. I have the finger spelling mode key on the closed square bracket key on your keyboard, which allows us to type fairly quickly. So what you have here, what's being shown here is the American Sign Language alphabet. We also have available various other alphabets accessible in the settings menu. We have, for example, German Sign Language, Quebec Sign Language, Tunisian Sign Language, French-Belgian Sign Language, Brazilian Sign Language. We have a whole bunch of different finger spelling alphabets here. So let's go back to ordinary sign editing. And you can just press the, you can press the button to toggle finger spelling, go back and forth between finger spelling and ordinary sign editing. So besides for the layout I've been showing you here for normal sign editing, there is also currently in development, not ready yet, a layout based off of the old, similar to the older SignWriter programs, such as SignWriter DOS. which the layout system for this is actually very extendable. A user can fairly easily program another layout, which can be added to this list here.
Oh.
So let's go back to that. Now, besides for fingerspelling, and plain text, we also have a button over here which does not work yet due to content security policy issues on the server, but we will have eventually an autocomplete button, which will be useful for a number of reasons. We'll be able to, for example, have a standardized spelling at that point. If we have autocomplete, then the user won't have to make sure that they're positioning everything exactly perfectly in order to be able to navigate to a name of a page correctly, or if they're trying to use their username, they don't want to type it slightly off and then have the server not recognize that it's the same thing. So we'll have an autocomplete function, which will also probably speed up typing speed greatly. So those are our functions here. We also have onto a bit of the technical details. The keyboard, the sign editing area that covers the keyboard is actually just overlaying the actual text box. The keyboard that overlays the text box is just covering the original text box, which still functions as text box in terms of other scripts on the page. For example, if another script on the page wants to interact with that text box, the changes to the text box, to the underlying text box, will be reflected in the visible sign editing area, and vice versa. If the user edits the sign editing area, changes are reflected in the text box. So if another script on the page wants to read that content, it gets the updated current content that the person is typing. There is a configuration option to use the TrueType fonts instead of images. Right now, the keyboard is pulling all of the images with symbols from the SignWriting image server. The TrueType font, using the TrueType font means that you don't have all that delay while it loads the images after every key press, but it means that you also have a substantial delay added at the beginning to load the entire TrueType font if you don't already have it available. If you do have it available already, then it's much, much faster. But otherwise, there are some issues. So whether to use it or not very much depends on the circumstances. In terms of browser compatibility, the keyboard works on all modern browsers. Firefox obviously has its own issues with vertical writing modes, so there are some problems with that. But the keyboard itself works on Firefox. Internet Explorer 8 and lower have some difficulties with plain text, but for the most part, it actually works on them too. So it's pretty good browser coverage. There are a couple of different situations in which one might want to use the keyboard. You might want to use it embedded in, you might want to use the keyboard to type in a sign language website, in which case a sign language website might have the keyboard script embedded right there, so the user doesn't need to do anything, doesn't require any special downloads. You might also want to type SignWriting on a non-sign language website. So to do that, I have in development, not completely finished, but we have the SignWriting keyboard extension, which will allow users to type SignWriting pretty much anywhere. There are some other limitations. Some websites have content editables as text boxes instead of ordinary text boxes, instead of ordinary simple text boxes. For example, certain social networks or email providers will use content editable elements so that users can add images or links or other complex stuff. The keyboard does not work for content editables right now. Having that working will be difficult. It probably won't happen anytime particularly soon. So if you want to type, suppose you want to write an email using SignWriting, would need to switch over to plain HTML view, assuming your email provider has that. Also, it's important to note that the outputted content is still formal sign writing, which needs a script to interpret it into anything readable. So if you were to send an email to somebody in sign writing using the system, and they don't have the script on, then they will just get an email full of gibberish. So there are still a couple of limitations. Those limitations are much smaller on things like the American Sign Language Wikipedia, which we have here. The American Sign Language Wikipedia just turned on the sign writing keyword by default less than 24 hours ago, just yesterday. This has also had the sign writing viewer on for a while. The American Sign Language Wikipedia is really where this all starts, actually, where all this starts. I got involved in this via the American Sign Language Wikipedia. This Wikipedia is probably at some point going to be like a major part of the sign language internet. Right now it's being held on the incubator. As soon as it gets to the necessary amount of activity, this will be split off into its own Wikipedia. Right now it has some 50 articles, about 50 articles. These were written actually before the keyboard was developed. And since there wasn't at the time anything that could directly put sign writing onto pages, these were copy-pasted from elsewhere. But now that we have the keyboard, a user can simply press edit and go here and then start typing fairly regularly. User could just type in here. User could just type some random bits of sign writing. Preferably not random bits of sign writing. User could preferably type an article title in there, search it, and then start typing regularly. And then hit preview. And save, and it works fairly similar to any other Wikipedia without any special difficulties added here. Incidentally, this would be great to have volunteers for writing more articles on the American Sign Language Wikipedia. We can also, right now we only have one that actually has articles, one sign language Wikipedia that has content on it, but it's fairly simple actually to add more, to start up other Wikipedias in sign languages. We have Wikipedias for however many sign languages. Eventually they might be split off into their own sites. And then we'll have a pretty decent core of the sign language internet. People can add other sites using the keyboard. Any questions so far? Let's go back here.
Oh, I have a lot. Do you have some, Adam?
Well, I did have a couple of questions that I noticed while you were presenting. One is on the keyboard there were two exactly same icons for next. What's the difference between the two of those?
Right. Since the keyboard is split down the middle, we have a different set of keys for each side. Next, on the right hand, we'll start another symbol with your right hand side, and the left hand side next key will start another one on the left hand side to finish the left hand symbol you're currently working on and start another one on the left side.
Okay, so if I was typing and I did something for the left side and did something for the right side, if I was finished with the one on the right side, I'd hit the one on the right side, and finished with the one on the left side, I'd hit the one on the left side?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And the other question is kind of back to when you were making the page on the Wikipedia, you were typing something, but I couldn't exactly see it because there was something that said containing, and then it was
Okay.
Oh,
covering
that's a
up what
bit of
you
an
were
issue.
typing.
Right. That's a
Can you
bit of an issue.
show your screen again and show me what you're talking about, because I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that was just a bit of a... Here, 1 second. Over here. So this is the Wikipedia search box. Ordinarily, it will give search suggestions underneath the search box. However, since we have this entire screen rotated over here, since SignWriting runs vertically, we have search box down here. There are still a few bugs with this.
That's a search box.
Right. So ordinarily, there would be a whole bunch of options here. However, since the area we're typing here is enlarged substantially, we would ideally want the search suggestions to be somewhere over here instead. That's right now just a bug that we don't have vertical writing modes completely figured out yet. But at some point...
So what are you searching for? All of the signs that use that hand shape? Is that what you're searching for?
Right, theoretically, I could be doing that, but right now I'd be using the search box to go to creating a new article with this title. It's a usable way of getting to the screen to create a new article.
I see.
Well, what that box usually does in Wikipedia is it will search all the articles within that Wikipedia that have something in the title like that.
Exactly.
And since there is no title that has the 5-hand shape with the black shading, it's not showing any titles.
Well, not exactly. The Wikipedia search function is much more geared towards spoken language, so it's looking for full words, which means that right now the search function will not find anything like that unless it actually sees a full sign somewhere in the article that looks exactly like that sign. We might have to do something. We might have to do something with that at some point and try to switch it to use a different search function so that it can look for similar individual symbols.
Okay.
Okay. Adam, do you have other questions? It's fascinating.
Those were the only 2 questions I could think of at the moment. Maybe I'll have some in a few minutes.
Well, just so everybody knows, Adam is the ASL editor for the ASL Wikipedia and has written one of the articles, if not a couple more, and certainly has been involved with editing articles all the way. And because Adam knows how to write articles with other techniques, it's important to us to know that Adam feels you can use this keyboard and create some articles, right? Because that would be really cool if we could start doing that. I agree with Yair, we need a call for everybody to start writing articles with the keyboard in the Wikipedia. Do you think you could teach us, Adam, how to do it, or show a document that could help us learn it?
I could probably do a little bit of a video or something to explain how to write the articles with the keyboard. When I first used the keyboard on one of the Wikipedia articles to do just a little bit of editing, I was so amazed how easy it was, because before I would have to go to the edit page, try and find where that sign was that I wanted to edit, which was like searching for a needle within the haystack under the ocean.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bring you up next, Steve. Don't worry. Yes.
And then once I finally found that part of the sign that I wanted to change, I'd have to copy that, go import it into SignPuddle, then edit it, and then export it to put it back. And hopefully I didn't lose my place.
But the point is, now Yair's keyboard, you can just type it directly. Is that right?
Yeah. It saved me so much time, and even if it was just like a little bit tweak where I'd go, oh, that sign was written with the wrong palm orientation. And it's like, okay, just go to it, change the key into it, and then done.
Well, I want to point out to everybody so they understand this history. This has gone, the Wikipedia, the ASL Wikipedia and other sign language Wikipedias would not be possible without Steve Slavinsky, who is also sitting here. because Steve has developed the software that gave us the foundation for where we are today. Isn't that right? And Steve, thank you, because the truth is none of us would be even knowing each other without the work that you have done. It's remarkable, really, that, Yair, you have built upon what Steve accomplished. But there was no way that Steve could do everything, and the fact that you've chosen to donate your time and focus your really brilliant software on this is just so amazing to me. How exciting. It makes it possible maybe to really get the Wikipedia up and running. As you say, it's already there in the incubator, which means that it's kind of in an isolated test area for those who are not familiar with these terms. Wikipedia.org is a great big site that has, what, 250 languages at least? Maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah, and so let's say you spoke Polish. You could click on the Polish Wikipedia on wikipedia.org and read the news and the information in the Polish spoken language. Well, now we are starting Wikipedias in sign languages, and that's exactly what we're talking about. But for it to become an official Wikipedia, we need to have just what Yair has given us, this way to enter and write directly. Because sign writing, for those who are new to this, it's a very unusual writing system. I think, Yair, you actually mentioned it. It's quite unique. It's very visual and also has a lot of symbols, very easy to read. In fact, I think the way we have seen it is that sign writing is probably easier to learn to read for those who know sign language than spoken language would be. But writing it and programming it is another story. We need to get the programmers to do a lot of cool stuff for us before it's usable on the basic web, which gets to my question. There are so many that I don't even know where to begin, and I don't want to take too much time on it. May I start first with a tiny little intro about how way back in history there was a programmer named Richard Gleaves. And Richard and I met in 1985, and around 1986 he started programming SignWriter. And there was Apple IIe and Apple IIc SignWriters, and then there was SignWriter DOS, and then later SignWriter Java. And all of these programs were basically the same on different formats, and we had a keyboard, and it was the only time we've ever had a keyboard in the past. And Yair has now created the second keyboard, the second generation, bringing it into the world of the web. We didn't have a web quite back in 1986, did we? Not in the same way that we do today, anyway. And so we weren't dealing with the web. We were, in the old days, creating a keyboard just for a little environment on one computer's desktop. So now all of a sudden we want to write on a website. That's what this is like with Wikipedia. And I was afraid we'd never get there. It seemed like it was so hard to do. I don't know how you've done it, Yair, but I guess it's because it's JavaScript. Is that how you did it?
Yes, it allows us to have functional programs on the internet, on the web, built into websites. It's also important that we have a keyboard rather than any of the various point-and-click systems to drag symbols onto an area, because with a keyboard, it really has the potential to speed up typing a lot. Mm-hmm. Users are just repeatedly typing out symbols with their hands rather than pulling them from lists one by one.
Yes, and I'm very grateful to you that you have settings. I noticed on your keyboard, when you're looking at the keyboard, it's to the right. There's a little settings symbol, and you click on that, and a window came up.
Yes.
And when you did that, not only were there choices of fingerspelling keyboards, which is very important. The old SignWriter DOS keyboard had 17 fingerspelling keyboards from different countries, of course. But also, what I'm most excited about is your settings allowing us to have different keyboard designs. That's really important, because what I found out in my experience was that people think differently. And I hate to say that kind of broadly, but there is a truth to it. And if we could have a few keyboard designs available, that would still give us the same articles. And it was possible to somehow make a clear document for that so people could figure out which one worked for them. Wow, that is really going to be popular and very valuable. So thank you for that as well. And trying to put in the SignWriter keyboard, the old one, wow, that's really cool. I can't wait to work with that. Are you working with the ISWA 2010? I assume you are, if you can use the TrueType.
Yes.
Okay. So here's my next question. Regarding the TrueType, I have, for example, the TrueType fonts that Steve developed. I have them installed on my computer. So since I have them pre-installed, could I use the TrueType fonts with your keyboard?
Yes, and since you have the TrueType fonts installed, you wouldn't have that extra delay at the beginning for loading it. Others who don't have it installed in advance would still be able to use it even with the TrueType turned on, because then it would just load it from the load the font from the server.
Okay. So now the question is it available now? In other words, if I were to go up on Wikipedia, the ASL Wikipedia, as you said, the keyboard shows up automatically now. Isn't that right? When you want to do editing? Right. I hope that, when is it going to use TrueType, and what do you think is going to happen? Will we be able to choose between TrueType and not?
I'm not completely sure on how the details of that should work. I don't want there to be a huge loading delay for most people when they're just starting.
Right.
But it's important for the TrueType fonts to be usable at some point. Also in displaying content, we should probably switch over to the TrueType fonts eventually, at least in situations where the user has it already loaded.
I wonder if you could give them a choice, just like you're going to have a choice of different keyboard designs. You might have a choice of using TrueType, or are they Ping or SVG images? What are the other ones called?
These are SVG images. It loads PNG images, I think, for browsers that don't support SVGs, such as the old Internet Explorers.
Yes. Okay. Well, no matter what you do, it's fabulous. I mean, I'm just delighted. I was just curious about that. And I do have definitely a question about the non-sign language websites that you mentioned, because one of the things that, as you probably know, SignWriting symbols have now been officially incorporated into Unicode 8. I know that Steve and others will be talking about this later. And it doesn't mean that everything is just working perfectly. It's just that programmers can start using Unicode 8 at times if they want to. The reason I bring this up is a while back when we were working with the committees that was formulating the Unicode with us, somebody said to me, well, you've got to do this because you have to be able to type SignWriting symbols in Google directory searches. And I said, oh, yes, of course. Well, if that is the goal, have you made that possible for us with this keyboard?
Sort of. You can type. If you go to Google and turn on the extension, they will allow you to type, but you won't really, since Google's layout is, unfortunately, has a text box surrounded by a other box which cuts off everything in the text box that goes too far in any direction. Okay. This is not a good shape for typing SignWriting. It's very long, but not very tall.
Exactly, and I bet all you could really do is a string of symbols in Google, like, you know, one hand and then another hand and then another hand, because if you tried to put one on top of the other, they wouldn't be able to go vertical, would they?
You can move them, but you wouldn't be able to see what you're doing.
Okay, well, that's my immediate reaction, is that even with all these enormously fabulous developments like TrueType and the new possibilities with Unicode 8 and all that, typing in a Google text field right now isn't quite there yet, because of the fact that even if you're typing from left to right, sign by sign, without any vertical writing as far as columns go, you still have signs where one thing goes on top of the other, and so the sign itself would be too tall and wouldn't fit. So darn it, that isn't great. But you're right about other websites that are not sign language standards, like email. You're correct about that. We'd love to be able to do that. And it sounds like that has some hope. It's a matter of just the future working it out. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I think Adam has some questions.
Yeah,
do you have Adam? Yeah.
I remembered a couple of things. There was one with occasionally when I'm typing in the keyboard, like if I go for a while, then it will be behind the keyboard.
Oh, yes.
I said there was a way to move the keyboard.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. We have, one moment, the keyboard can be, the keyboard will sometimes cover things, since it's covering a good chunk of the bottom of the screen here. So the keyboard is draggable using this little drag icon on the side. You can drag it anywhere on the screen. the keyboard will remember where you last dragged it if you switch windows, or if you if you go to another page, if you click a link or something, the keyboard will remember where you last positioned it, and it will stay there. So yeah, you can avoid covering the area where you're trying to type and trying to see what you're typing by dragging the keyboard.
Okay, I have a question from Erica Hoffman, and it may be that Adam already has more questions, but guess what? On email, Erica Hoffman just said, "Hi all, I'm enjoying the presentation from home. I'm not sure how to ask questions live, and I remember the difficulties caused last year when too many people tried to participate at once. So I thought I'd post questions here to be answered later at people's convenience." Well, I'm interrupting you now. I'm sorry about that, everybody. But so, Yair, this is really great. This is what Erica's saying. A quick question. In setting up the keyboard, how did you decide where to place different elements on the split board? I'm interested in the physical skill habits involved in typing.
Well, for deciding where to put things, the fingers, the base fingers, are underneath the fingers, because otherwise it's probably going to be difficult to learn this thing unless you have some very simple, intuitive stuff. The other thing is there wasn't actually all that much thought into it. I probably should have put more thought into where I positioned those keys.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on that, Yair. We are just beginning. This is just a beginning, isn't that right?
Yes.
And if we look at this presentation as the introduction to an amazing and well-developed concept that's already working for people like Adam, I think what we need to do is work with you more. I'm going to, I know that. And maybe Erica has other people that might want to work with you. And if the more people type, the more we'll get better designs, get new ideas. As you pointed out, you can actually program different keyboard designs, not just 2, but maybe even more, right?
Yes.
So not to make ourselves crazy, I'm not saying we should have 1,000, but we could maybe work with enough people to find out what works for them and have 2 or 3 different choices. So Erica, the research is just beginning. And Adam, did you have another question?
Yeah, I had another one. You had mentioned there was a that little button that you were showing up in the corner with the 5 hand. What was that exactly? I didn't.
The plain text. You're talking about the toggle plain text button, I think. Yes, on the close bracket key. So.
Can you show us
here? This key is the one you're referring to?
No, not.
Oh.
Up in the very upper corner of your.
Oh,
web
to the far right, the right.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yes,
For the extension.
Where?
When the extension is fully developed, this button will turn on and off the extension so that you can turn on the SignWriting keyboard. And then when you, in a context where you don't want to be typing SignWriting, where you want to be typing ordinary text, you can press it again to turn it off. This will persist.
Yeah, I just wanted to show everybody, can you see it's far up, not on the keyboard itself, but we're supposed to look up at the very, very far top of his browser, see? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even see where you were looking for some time.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. After the keyboard is turned on via the extension, it will persist from web page to web page. Any text box that you click at that point will be will function as a SignWriting editing area, even on a non-sign language website.
So if I was on some website that didn't have the automatic keyboard like it did on the incubator that we have now, and I wanted to type something in SignWriting, and I had that extension, I could just click on that and it would take all the text fields with formal SignWriting and use it into what we would see?
Yes, exactly. Even though it's without formal SignWriting, any text box on the page at that point, you will be able to type signs into.
Wow, that's very powerful, isn't it? I have a. Steve, do you have any questions or comments that you want to make?
I'm just always amazed by what Yair can do. He's doing the vertical writing, and then he does it in text box and the keyboard. I love the keyboard. I've dived into his JavaScript and his CSS, and I understand some of it, but I really need to get down there and and analyze that and look at that. But I love keyboarding. Keyboarding is great, especially when people learn the keyboard.
Yeah.
You know, how quickly they can type is amazing. And once we get the query strings in there and the API for the autocorrect and the searching, it will just even get better and better. It's a bright future.
That's right. And now that we're talking about that with Steve, what about Yair's keyboard somehow interweaving with some of the software you've already developed, Steve? Like, I'm not saying this should happen, but SignPuddle Online someday, maybe, and even some of the other software programs that exist, even SignWriter Studio. Is there a way for us to somehow get keyboarding like you're doing into their programs?
I'm not actually completely sure how those programs work, so I don't know if I can.
Well, that may not be. Maybe it only has to be in a web browser. Is that right?
Right. Anything in a web browser can use the keyboard.
Right. So other programs that are designed for the web might possibly, maybe someday, hook up with you. I hope so. It's just an idea. If it's not possible, it's okay too. We've got a lot going here because I do have a question. I know some people are going to ask this. About typing the spoken language not down in a vertical column, but maybe it could go from left to right or right to left like Arabic does. Our next presenter is from Saudi Arabia and has taught and researched SignWriting in Saudi Arabia and Jordan since 2002. It's been a long time. His name is Dr. Abu Shera, and I'm sure that they would love to use the keyboard as well. But sometimes with spoken language, we want to be able to type our own spoken language the way it's supposed to go. Is there a way that we could somehow intertwine that with the keyboard?
I could change in most situations, I think you probably want it vertical because most situations where you're putting plain text into a sign language area, you're just putting a couple characters. You're putting square brackets for technical reasons. Sometimes you will need, of course, actual text content, words, and sentences. And in those cases, reading vertical adds some difficulty.
Yes, it does in most languages anyway. Maybe not in some, but most of them.
Right. So I suppose I could at some point add the functionality so that when it recognizes actual words, then it could change it so that it's going horizontal, so that it's more readable.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about the Wikipedia, the ASL Wikipedia. I see the spoken language going down. And there have been times when it absolutely baffled me. I never forgot, even though I obviously know SignWriting, the moment I came into that site, I went, oh my goodness, what is this? And then I was trying to read the spoken language like this, you know. And
yes.
I actually think that is one of the reasons why so many people told me years ago, no, you're never going to get this into a computer because it doesn't work like spoken languages do in the Western world, at least. And, well, okay, but here we are, and we're doing it, and it's wonderful, but somehow we have to interblend these two cultures and these two worlds.
Right. Eventually, probably most sign language websites will not actually have any substantial amount of spoken language text.
Yeah.
The American Sign Language Wikipedia still, on Incubator, still has bits of spoken language, of English text, mostly because it's still not all translated.
Yes, I know, but and poor Adam, he's the one doing the translations for the Translate Wiki to get all the menus in American Sign Language. And it's idealistic and a good idea to have sites that are full sign language, but there are always going to be educational sites that will need to blend the both of them because a lot of hearing people teach deaf children, and they need to be able to see their own spoken language next to the signs. So,
yeah. So when you're building a website, there's simple CSS to do that. We actually have that here. One moment. On the American Sign Language Wikipedia main page, we have this area over here, which is specifically
yes,
rotated.
Exactly. You didn't rotate that one. Good. Glad to see it.
Right.
So it is possible, obviously.
Yes, it is possible to have ordinary horizontally oriented text, even within a sign language document.
So in other words, when all the Translate Wiki's done, then we won't be seeing the English going down. It would only be the sign language. That's good. Okay. Wow. This is an amazing presentation. So where do we go from here? What is your next? Your next part of this project?
There's still a lot to do here. The SignWriting keyboard right now is still missing some symbols. It's still missing some basic functionality. It's still missing some of this. The autocomplete still needs to work. I haven't actually even figured out a UI for that.
I think that's a pretty amazing feature you're trying to put in there. You're trying to help people when you're searching for, is it searching a sign? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. No, I was talking about autocomplete for when you've partly typed out a sign and you want to have a system fill in the rest of the sign for you so that you don't have to do every little bit by yourself manually.
So it's a partial spelling for you. You type a word like hello and you get to the first 3 letters and all of a sudden the last 2 letters are put in there in English, right?
Yeah, like a sign language equivalent of that. You type in the first couple bits of symbols and it fills in the rest of the thing for you.
Boy, that would take a really good thick dictionary, but I'm glad to hear you're going to do that. That's good. Really good. Wow. Okay. And I hear from lots of people on email. This is very interesting. I just want you to know, Yair, that last year we had people asking questions on the side of the screen. It got quite exhausting, and so we didn't do it this year. But I personally am getting emails from people asking me questions. How do you like that? We have about 10 more minutes, and before I go to those other questions, Adam, did you have another question?
The only thing I just wanted to say was that there was something that Yair mentioned when he was talking about typing on the keyboard that I didn't even realize, was that after you have the first 5 fingers, like if you had the 5 hand, you'd have all the 5 fingers up. After that, you can say that you want whichever one's bent. I didn't even realize that. So I was going through, toggling through afterwards, and it would just take forever to get to other hand shapes. So that's good to know.
Right, there's a lot of hand shapes that are like that, that the best way to get to them is once you have the fingers up, you just move some of them down. So if you want to have like this, or if you want to, you can have, say, if you have all your fingers up and you wanted the thumb to be in a different position, you press the thumb key a bunch of times.
Okay. Well, what I think is happening here is that we're probably going to work with you, Yair, Adam and I. Maybe Adam can assist us in making your current keyboard really, really working well for everybody and making sure that I can learn it and things like that. And then I personally want to give you a new design of the old SignWriter DOS keyboard that would be related to the ISWA 2010. Because SignWriter DOS keyboard, which is a terrific design, I think, that Richard Gleaves programmed beautifully, had a logic to it that I liked, but it was dependent on 2 things. One was that we didn't have a big symbol set like we do today, and it was not based, obviously, on the ISWA 2010 because that was back in the year 1986. So, I mean, clearly we are way in the future now. The other design, so I want to give you that new design, but the other thing is that the old SignWriter DOS keyboard required 5 special character or special command keys, we called it. One was a rotate key, one was a mirror key. You sort of have that already in your other design in a different way, and that's fine. But the question is whether you could even do those special command keys, since that was a programming job within the SignWriter DOS program. Would that be a problem to try that?
You're talking within SignWriter mode?
Yeah. In other words, we had a special command keys in the SignWriter DOS keyboard design.
Yes, that actually is already working for some of them, not for all of them.
Great. Wow. So that means there's a potentially hopeful thing there. Good. Fabulous. And I have a question from Stefan Vorman. He says, "Hi, I'm enjoying the presentation from home. I can't do the questions live, so here's my question. Would it be possible to get a demonstration on how long it takes to write a sentence with this keyboard without using a dictionary in the background? Can you write the sentence in ASL like, SignWriting is a wonderful invention?" Well, thank you very much, Stefan, for the nice sentence. And, well, maybe we can't do the demo today, don't you agree? But we could do a demo for you later, Stefan. And the reason I say that is it's only about 10 minutes before we're going to be done, unless you feel you could do that for us. Can you do a sign really quickly for us, Yair?
I can do a single sign. I don't know very many signs. I'm not fluent in sign language myself. So that makes it a bit difficult in general to work on this.
And you know what's fascinating about this, Stefan and Erica and everybody who's watching? That sounds like that's not good, but actually I have found the software developers who do not know sign language, if they're working with people who do, they just do a great job. Because if they're good programmers, that's all that matters. In other words, this is not a deaf or hearing issue at all. It's really just getting it to work for those who are using it. And that's why, obviously, Adam and others who know sign language, like yourself, Stefan and Erica, we need to work with Yair and get it so it's really functioning for us. Now, just so you know, Stefan is going to be presenting tomorrow, the first presentation on Wednesday, the 22nd of July. And Stefan's development is with a team in Hamburg, and they have their own software called the DELEGS editor. And the DELEGS editor uses SignPuddle Online, grabs a dictionary, sign already written in SignPuddle, and places it into sentences in the DELEGS software. And their sentences are going from left to right, even though the signs themselves are stacked. And the reason they're going from left to right is that they need to place the signs with the words because they're using it to translate text. Like, let's say you had a science textbook in German or in English. You need to be able to type the sentence and also have the equivalent signs for those deaf people who are using it to learn how to read and write a spoken language. So it's got a different focus. It's trying to help. And to do that, they would need to go from left to right. And I figured the first thing that Stefan would ask is, what about typing from left to right? I figured that might happen. But I want to thank you for doing the vertical. For now, that's enough. But in time, do you think we could ever go horizontal?
Sure, that would require some extra stuff since the signs vary in height somewhat. That would be at a bit of difficulty, but I could probably do that, yes. And
Yes.
probably actually even add a special mode for adding direct translation of text.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be too difficult.
Well, you see that, Stefan, there's hope for all these programs, and thank you, Yair, for that, because if under the settings someday you could choose going vertical or horizontal with the signs themselves, that would be fabulous. That would be similar to the spoken language going from left to right or down as well, the same kind of issue. That way we could mix and match, and you'd have that many more users. And I know Erica had one, and Steve or Adam, do you have anything more to ask? Because there was one thing. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I was just going to say about the demonstration. If I had more practice with the keyboard, I would do the demonstration. But I mean, like I just said, I didn't know about doing the variation within the hand shapes if he picked the various fingers. So it is somewhat new to me, but I can see it being very quick to do because once you figure out how the structure is and everything, you could very easily just get the signs in there and you wouldn't have to use a dictionary. So I know that's what Stefan was talking about, was trying to, as to how fast it would be. I don't know exactly how fast it would be because I'm not that skilled at it yet, but I will pretty soon, I'm sure, with the data.
Yes, and also, just so you know, when I was working on the SignWriter DOS keyboard, and we can do this with the Yair very soon, I'm sure, at that time, I was very skilled at typing, and I never used the dictionary. I actually was shocked when I found out people were copying and pasting dictionary signs and making sentences, because I had planned to have everybody type, and instead I found a lot of people didn't really want to learn that because they found out they could paste and just put sentences, together that way. So
long-term copy pasting probably slows things down, assuming the keyboard is actually capable of having people type at a regular speed. If you type regularly, you will get faster at it, and the maximum speed is probably fairly high.
yes, I think so, especially if you have autocomplete. Can you imagine if we're starting a sign, you start completing it for me? The only problem with that is it drives me crazy in English when people do that for me in programs. I mean, I didn't want that word. You gave me the wrong word. Stop giving me an autocomplete for the wrong word. That could happen, I would assume, even with sign language.
I suppose, except it's probably going to be triggered directly by a deliberate key press for this.
Oh, okay.
Rather than just going by itself.
Well, we only have 4 more minutes. I'd like to finish Erica's question because after she asked you about the design, she said that Erica's interested in the physical skill habits involved in typing. Given that this is a different type of writing system, Erica is wondering what research you might have done, and you just said that you hadn't done that much research, and that she's interested in doing a physically efficient, kind of intuitive, QWERTY keyboard. So I'd like to point out, Erica, that there is actually a development coming under the settings for QWERTY. What are the different keyboards that you're offering?
Yes, between the layouts options and the language options, there is options for switching keyboards because JavaScript is not actually able to tell what keyboard the person's using, and it's not able to tell directly what position on the keyboard the key pressed was. It just knows that you pressed like an A or a B. So the keyboard has settings for if you're using a QWERTY keyboard or a Dvorak keyboard or a Quartz keyboard or an Azerty keyboard like they use in France, I think. So yes, there are different options for the different physical keyboards.
That's absolutely fabulous, especially since if you're doing finger spelling, you need to be able to go to the finger spelling that's related to the keyboard where you live. And I lived in Europe enough to know that their keyboards are really different, and it was really complicated to create 17 finger spelling keyboards. So I want to thank you for this. Listen, I'm overwhelmed with joy. I'm so joyous over this development, Yair. Thank you. And I hope this leads to putting Wikipedia for American Sign Language and other sign languages in the official wikipedia.org. That means that we need to start using your keyboard more in the Wikipedia, and the more people who are willing to volunteer, the closer we'll get to that. Isn't that right, Yair? Yes, absolutely. As soon as we have enough activity on the Wikipedia, it will be split off into, there's also the need for the translations, the localization, which Adam is working on. But chances are those will be finished before we get to the level of activity necessary. So the main point we should be focusing on is writing articles, really.